Silniejszy bym biegł. Przejdą lata i wieki przewidą, pozostaną ślady dawnych dni. I wszystkie maki na Monte Cassino, czerwiejsze będą od polskich czosnych krwi.
Allied armies entered from Sicily to the mainland of the boot of Italy. At the bottom of the boot of the Italy was Monte Cassino and a very heavily fortified defense line by German General Marshal, Field Marshal Albert Kesselring. He was very capable commander of the Hitler armies, and he designed the defense line that blocked the road to Rome. So Allied armies stopped at that place, couldn't penetrate that Gustav line, that's what it was called, a Gustav line, heavily defended and heavily armored German defense line. Starting from January 17th, tried Allied armies, British,
French,
8th Army conducted by Sir Harold Alexander. Under his command, he had all kinds of other nation units like Australian, New Zealanders, Canadians, and others that belonged to the Commonwealth of the British Empire at that time. Do you hear me there?
Yes.
Good. So forth. So that was the British forces. Then on the other side, that were on the west side, were American forces, 5th Army, which now is stationed at Fort Sheridan, Illinois. After the war, that's where they moved over there. That was a 5th Army commanded by General Mark Clark. Remember Mark Clark? Because he was my last commander in Korea. And he then, after that, he retired. So there were armies here. There were also units of a French, Free French, okay, hold on, Christopher. I'll get sometimes wound up, so you have to wait for until I get unwound. The French army there, these were not really army. It was actually 2 divisions. These 2 divisions were from the French colonial North Africa from Morocco. There were 2 divisions, Moroccan divisions under the French command there. There were also Canadians, there were also South Africans as well. And finally came Polish Second Corps that joined under the British command of General Harold Alexander and in the 8th Army, British 8th Army. So the Polish Second Corps, not quite a corps, because a corps is composed of 3 divisions or 4 divisions. The Polish Corps was short of manpower and had 2 combat-ready divisions that took part in the Monte Cassino, Battle of Monte Cassino. Allied forces started on the 17th of January until 18th of May, charging the Gustav line and couldn't take it. There were 4 approaches that were conducted, and all four failed. General Clark decided, having so many casualties, that Germans probably have an observation point in the abbey, in the monastery that was built in 529 by Benedict over there. Of course, the monks were already gone, but their monastery remained. General Clark decided that most likely the accuracy of the German artillery and German fire, machine guns, and mortar fire is conducted from this monastery. Let's destroy it. The old, historic, very old historic man, General Clark, gave command, let's destroy it. 400 aeroplanes, bombers, dropped 1,400 tons of explosive on the monastery, and monastery remained in rubbles. Thought that probably now we can take Gustav Line and Monte Cassino, approach that was a third approach to conquer the Gustav Line. It didn't work. So the bombing of the monastery was useless. However, to Germans that remained there, and these were crack soldiers, paratroopers, who were dug into the mountain and into the monastery, used the rubbles of the monastery as a place from which they were giving next fire. The Monte Cassino itself was barren, had no trees. There was no place to hide. When approaching armies that were trying to take it were visible to them like on a table, and their artillery from the monastery, from the Monte Cassino, and it was located on a valley of River Liris, and on the other side, artillery, German artillery, also bombarded those that were charging. There was not possibility. Allied forces, ladies and gentlemen, 245,000 Allied troops. Casualties were 50,000, while German casualties were 20,000. What a difference between one and the other is. Monte Cassino. Commanding general of the 8th Army, British 8th Army, approached commander of the Polish 2nd Corps, General Anders. We have pictures of General Anders in here. General Władysław Anders. He approached him and he said, "You have only 2 divisions, but we'll give you a support, artillery support. Will you attempt to try?" General Anders thought about it and talked to his staff, to his general staff. He talked to the soldiers and said, "If we take Monte Cassino, it will be heard around the world that Polish army that fell in 1939 when German army crossed Poland, and on the other side Soviet Red Army crossed from the other and crushed Poland, and they couldn't possibly defend and win." Many of the soldiers from these armies went in exile and found themselves in France. In France, Polish, there were many enough. In France, General Sikorski formed Polish army there. However, France capitulated to Hitler, and there was no place for Polish soldiers there. They evacuated to England and stayed in England until D-Day, where they take part in the D-Day. However, here we are in the Italian peninsula, where we are defending where the German Field Marshal General Kesselring across the line. Mr. Polish General Commander of the Second Polish Corps said to General Harold, British General Commander of the Army, said, "We'll take it. We'll take it." And they went. That's what the song was all about. That's what the song was all about. We'll take the Monte Cassino. We'll avenge ourselves on Germans who destroyed our country in 1939. September 1st, 1939, ladies and gentlemen, I was ready to go to school. Schools were closed. I didn't go to school. We found out that on the western side, the war is on. We were on the eastern side, right close to the Soviet-Russia frontier. My father was serving in the defense of the eastern frontier. When the Soviet tanks entered there, I remember, population was very confused at that time when Soviets attacked Poland 17 days after Hitler's army. On the 17th of September, Soviet tanks entered. People were very confused because they send secret services, NKVD, KBG, known to most of you probably, there, announcing that they are coming to help Poland against the Germany. And people didn't know whether they should avoid them or should they trust them, but they didn't. They right away started to arrest everybody around that was on any position, was arrested and placed in different camps for the execution. 24,000 of the Polish officers were killed in a common grave in Katyn forest near Smolensk. My father was in Smolensk, arrested and sent to Smolensk. We lost any knowledge of him, what happened